Happy March 8th, listeners. So, hope everyone's doing well. Today I'll be doing a Bitcoin fact of the day. It's been a while since my last one. And since then, I've been getting really into Dash. Both as an investment, just because it's doing well on its own, but also in relationship to the big dog Bitcoin. Dash has been impressing me. And it's not so much what Dash has been doing, so much as what Bitcoin hasn't been doing. And the thing is, like, I've been using Bitcoin this past week, and the fees required to use it and the wait time if you don't have a high enough fee is really something else. Like, it's not acceptable for use as cash. And it's going to get to the point where you're going to need to spend considerable amount of money to move stuff securely, which frankly will still be valuable. So I don't think it's an extensible threat to Bitcoin, not in the short term. But from like a usability, like user perspective, it's really going to scare people off. And until there's alternatives within the Bitcoin space like Lightning networks, which I don't fully understand to what extent Lightning networks are centralized versus if they're not. That could be total conjecture that they are, but in my mind it's like a secondary thing that's not part of the network itself. And I imagine there'll be quite a lot more data collection at that phase. So that wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. So I've been getting to that. And I learned a lot about it lately. So, they have a different way of organizing the payout structure from, doing stuff to secure the network. A lot of times people say to me, like, Bitcoin isn't backed by anything. And, like, cryptocurrencies are backed by stuff. They're backed by people and machines, and they have costs like electricity and their hours they put into it. And so all cryptocurrencies have figured out ways of incentivizing the participants. So in Bitcoin, there's mining, people who run special machines that do that act as like writing nodes essentially in this system. The people who are responsible for adding the information to the ledger, they get a reward. They either get a transaction fee, and they get a mining fee, which is what the built-in inflation is in the cryptocurrency. Up to the certain point of Bitcoins or really any cryptocurrency being mined, supposing there is an endpoint. So for Bitcoin and Dash, there's a finite number of tokens that are created. But these I lost my train of thought. All right, I was talking about the governance structure. So I'll just start from the beginning, what I understand about it. Oh yeah, so the miners are the people getting paid in Bitcoin. In Dash, what they figured out was that they can, instead of having all of the money that's generated by the system going to the people that are just providing that writing into the ledger function, they've developed other payments that allow them to do governance of their model easier and come to solutions quicker. And that can be a strength or a weakness depending on that statement alone. You don't necessarily want quick decision making to happen in a decentralized network. So it's actually one of the strengths of Bitcoin. It's what makes it right now a very good analogy of describing it as gold. Like, despite me being kind of hot for Dash right now in terms of what's like the new thing that's interesting me, Bitcoin's still actually a strength that they are slow. So I think that it's easy to go onto like the Bitcoin Reddit and see like there's a lot of infighting between the developers and like their fanboys, and then also like all the third-party providers of services and everything. They all kind of have an opinion and they throw mud and stuff, and like seems like a really toxic environment. And depending on where you're looking, it is a toxic environment. but it actually happens to be a benefit that they can't come to agreement very fast, because it means it's that much harder to really like subvert in a very overt way, I guess. So not subvert, but like overtly take over a process, because even like these guys are overtly trying to come to a solution. They're not being like sneaky about it, and they still are having trouble. And so it's actually like a mixed bag. So I like that. I think that's interesting with Dash. And given that it's like its use case is a bit different, thinking about it just in terms of cash, um, and the fact that they seem to have thought about that as well, like the risk of making decisions too quickly. So they do have a nice, seemingly nicely distributed way of the master nodes, I guess, voting, but I actually haven't experienced that yet. So I'm going to hold off on giving my opinion on how the master nodes vote and if that makes sense to me, because I haven't gone that far into the research. Eventually, hopefully, I'll be running master node, and as far as like feeling like I have a voice or not within the network, it would be a very interesting experience. Some other Bitcoin related updates in my life is that I've been pretty, again, overtly trying to get Bitcoin adopted in the Armenian community. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, we're a diaspora. We have Armenians all over. We're a global people. We've been stateless people. We've been our stuff confiscated, all over the place in all different times. So I think that there is a relatively easy sell, and I've been finding that to be true, which is pretty good. And so in that regard, trying to get like Armenians into Bitcoin a bit, I'm going to be talking at the Fairlawn St. Leon's Church at some point to the Men's Guild, but I think everyone's invited, about like the basics of Bitcoin. And recently, I convinced a very well-respected Armenian violinist to consider accepting Bitcoin for a project she's crowdfunding. Her name's Nune. I should figure out what her last name is if I'm going to talk about her on this. It's like Malikian, but I don't know if that's actually her last name. Something like that. Let's see, I can look this up quickly actually. Yeah, I'm gonna guess Malikian. I should know this though. Anyway, that's pretty exciting. That potentially, like, she has fans all over the world. It's consisting of the diaspora, and she starts accepting Bitcoin and like kind of announces it as a thing. Be good for her because she'll get money from me. I promised her to pay her in Bitcoin if she does accept Bitcoin, and she says she's looking into it. So I'm pretty excited about that. And this is maybe a story that turns into me like on the same path of trying to subvert Armenians, but I don't think it is quite as much, although there is an Armenian in the story. But basically, as a healthcare IT consultant, I kind of was able to steer a conversation into using a distributed database for a project, and it piqued their interest. So hopefully that develops into something. So I know you're thinking, you're like, damn, this is a lot of Bitcoin related stuff in this guy's life. Like, he said he used it. He has friends that are accepting it. I didn't even tell you about D10E yet on the show. And I don't know, maybe now's a good time. But before, I guess I'll tell you about this project I'm doing with my brother first. So this weekend, whatever that is, March 10th maybe, at the Javits Center for a few days, there's going to be a jewelry manufacturer expo. My whole family's in jewelry, always have been. gone into these things quite a bit, and now my brother is a jewelry designer. He 3D prints jewelry that can be cast into jewelry. It's very impressive. He's very talented, and I'm gonna have him make for me a Bitcoin hardware wallet piece of jewelry. Cause what better way to be a Bitcoin baron than to have jewelry that is made out of electronic gold? It's there's a poeticness to it that makes me think it's gonna work right off the bat. I've also asked a lot of people and they're interested in it. So I think tomorrow, which is Friday, so maybe like 2 days before the event starts. I think it's maybe starts on Sunday. We're gonna sit down. I'm gonna film it. Us making this piece of jewelry, and then we'll get some video of us trying to like pre-sell it at the conference, and it'll be kind of funny to get people's reactions about Bitcoin. Have they heard about it? What's their impression? Are they negative? Do they buy from us? You'll get to see my sales skills on display as well. So bring your notebook, and it should be a good time. So this is all contingent on tomorrow, my brother making the time. Maybe I should just show up with it. I think that's probably what I'll do. I'll get like a nice number of beers, and then show up with the treasure. Make something beautiful. He was saying we're gonna make a pendant, and then I don't know how you'd wear that pendant, so we're gonna have to figure that out. It would have to be pretty cool. The other thing we were thinking about making is a belt, but there's not enough time for that. Those take longer to print. All right, so that's kind of the Bitcoin update. D10E was obviously very Bitcoin related, so I'll report on that. I was one of the speakers. I was there talking about Bad Mirror TV. It's a D10E. I finally figured out what a numeration is. Numerization. I'm not really sure what it's called, so I guess I don't know it that well. But Matt McKibben, one of the organizers, explained it to me. So D10E, it means the first letter of the name you're trying to condense, and then the number of letters in the word, or is the number of letters between the first and last letter. I don't know. It's just one of those. And then the last letter of the word. So in this case, they took the word decentralize, and D10E is like that getting squished together. It's a thing, apparently. I learned something new. Now you did. So I was one of the speakers, and basically it was like it was in Bucharest, Romania, which I had never been to, and I took 4 flights on Monday to get there on Tuesday. Don't highly recommend that, but at the same time, I got to see 2 great cities, so there are a lot worse things. And Bucharest, Romania was cool. It started off with a tour that they had organized, kind of like pre-conference, and anyone who's planning on doing a conference where people are like traveling, it's a pretty good idea. They had like tours built into the beginning and end of the conference, and it was a like very nice way of networking and partying as well. So that was cool. And so that we like went around the city. We saw there's a lot of like French influence, but obviously a lot of communist influence, and it makes for like a very bizarre experience, frankly. Like the opulence of these buildings next to like the ugliness of the communist buildings, and then they all are covered in spray paint, so they have that to share. So that makes for a nice visual. Let's see. I did a speaking engagement, right? So I was there to speak, but most of the people there had left to go take a nap because they were about to go party like 2 hours afterwards. So wasn't the happiest about that. Nonetheless, I went up. I had maybe a crowd of like I don't know, 50 people, maybe a little bit more. And I gave the speech, went pretty well. I came up with the night before to kind of cater to the audience. I was told by a rude person on Reddit that I said too much, so it's probably good advice. I'm trying to be conscious of it right now. So I might have said too much, but other than that, I think it went well. I had some people come up to me afterward and say they liked the idea, and the whole thing was essentially like talking about the decentralization of culture and how that fits in with the higher theme of decentralization. So yeah, there was quite a bit of partying. I got to meet John McAfee, and he was a nice guy. He was very much like into his thing. Like you could tell he like really. I mean, I don't know if this is his normal self. So maybe it's just him at conferences, but like he seems to like just live and breathe and think network security and hacking, because that's like all I ever heard him talk about. And I was around him, you know, quite a few hours over the 3 days. Um, but it was good. He gave a speech about like not being cocky about your network security and assuming you're hacked, and I generally think that like that's been my approach anyway. And so I felt like okay, that's validating. It makes sense. And he was talking about having a hardware wallet, and obviously I agree with that. And I think now with all this CIA hacking news, like even more important than ever to have a hardware wallet. I mean, not having a hardware wallet and having more than I don't know, let's say $500 in Bitcoin. If it costs $100, like a good one, a Trezor costs $100, and if you have more than like 500, you're saving. I don't know. Seems like maybe 500 is still a little bit too low. I don't know. It's up to you to decide, obviously, but uh, I think that the hardware wallets are really going to be a key for adoption of Bitcoin as gold, because it's like something very tangible. You're trying to like sell the idea to someone, and they can like hold something and say like this stores your private keys. It like, oh, private keys are a thing that I can conceptualize. They're a thing separate from the public key, because or it's like it's not a password. It's this thing in this thing. I think that helps. I said again. I should go through and like count, try to get better. So I'm trying to think what else to like report on. I mean, Romania had incredibly beautiful women. All the women, not all the women, but like the average in terms of beautiful women was far to the right. So that was impressive. They have a huge like it's like underground that became like the normal of like computer science community of kind of like hacker nerds. And it was interesting. They had this is one of the days. I said now I'm commenting on and it's 4 total. Oh geez. So I went into the restaurant of the where the conference is being held at the hotel, and just went to get breakfast, and I saw a huge table, and I just sat down and started eating with the group because there were other speakers that I had already met the day before. And the guy who sits next to me was the minister of something. Maybe the minister of communications or something like that. And, so he's in his suit, and like I didn't really talk to him. He was speaking in Romanian to his colleagues, and seemed nice enough. He went on the stage later and he gave a speech, and he was giving his story about how when he was young he would go to the internet cafes and like learn how to hack, and then he said he wants to decentralize the government. And I thought that was crazy for him to say that, and I think he might have been pandering to us, because like that's kind of your job when you're supposed to go up and talk to a conference of people and like convince them to invest in your country. But at the same time, like that was pretty interesting. Like he was young, he knew his stuff supposedly. Like I don't see why not. Like he was a representative of a much larger group of people which is like part of this Romanian culture, and that was really quite neat. So I like that. And then as far as the other speakers, there were some good ones for sure. I think there was two actually. Um, in fact, there was three. There were three companies or groups that were working on a similar concept that I found very interesting. I'm going to keep an eye on. It's this idea that you can have a blockchain sitting between two separate blockchains, and you can make them interact with each other, and you can create a, essentially a scenario where you can put uh, a a token from one blockchain into the token of another one and have it execute a contract perhaps. And that's a pretty fantastic idea. Obviously, it's not that simple, and it's not literally doing what I just said, but like that in it's how it would work. And um, that was cool, and it was it was interesting that there was multiple people thinking about it, and it kind of goes to the idea of there being um, really like different classes of cryptocurrency where they like fulfill a specific role, and they're if they're in thinking that, they're like, okay, well, how are these different cryptocurrencies going to interact with each other? It's a really next level way of thinking about it, and it was good. It seems like that. So it seems like the right time for that. So that's exciting. I mean, right time to start thinking about that, perhaps, so that when it's time to really get going, it's there. So I was impressed by that for sure. I don't know what else to say. One funny thing that stood out on kind of the touristy parts of the trip was John McAfee chugging a bottle of vodka at like 11 a.m. on a bus for like a good 15 seconds. It was impressive. I was like, this is gonna be a fun bus trip, and it was. All right, so I don't know. That's I think I gave you quite a lot of updates and info. Generally, that's how I envision this going. Less ums, more info, more better, interesting stories. And I should probably take quicker to do these, but this was like, I haven't done it for maybe a week and a half, so I'll try to do more regular, shorter ones. But this one, you guys got a lot, and I'll definitely keep you updated on the kind of side projects, Bitcoin related, that I have going. So whether Nuna like actually does the crowdfunding, and I'll make sure to like point all my thousands of fans. I occasionally get like Facebook updates that says like self-aggrandizing podcast got 2 new views on Facebook, and I was like, who are these people? Hell yeah, how'd they find me? So I'm happy about that, and that'll be sure to change. But by the time that changes, the crowdfunding will be over. But you can still like look it up, listen. Why not? And definitely the thing with my brother Adi, that's gonna be fun. I'm making a video about that, so keep an eye out for that. Um, 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 Peace.